All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Wagler. I'm the state coordinator for the Main Street Iowa program, and so grateful to have you here for our April Main Street Iowa Leadership Webinar Series. Today, we are excited to have Jeff Sigler from Revitalize or Die here to talk about a topic that he has been really driving home in so many places across the country, and that is the idea of building civic pride and fighting community apathy. We last had Jeff at a fall workshop, and I'll have everyone mute yourselves, please. There we go. We last had Jeff with us, I believe it was 2018 at the Fall Main Street Iowa workshop in downtown Jefferson, talking about a very consistent topic. That's something that I think rang true for so much of our network, especially as we get geared up for the spring and summer months here in 2023. We thought it would be a great time to bring Jeff back to talk more about his work with building civic pride. So Jeff, without any further ado, I will pass it over to you to do a little bit more of an introduction and then jump into the conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Michael, and I appreciate your having me. And thanks everybody for tuning in today. So I fell into, I don't know if I fell into it, but I ended up becoming sort of fascinated with the idea of civic pride and civic apathy. And so I'm going to give you that story, but a bit of my background. So I grew up in Ohio, kind of a dying Rust Belt town that we'll talk about quite a bit, called Lima. Ended up studying economics in college, and that's sort of much more. At the time, it was like, well, I don't know what I want to do. I'll study economics, but it's been really incredible how much it's informed my work and how much economics is really at the heart of what we do, particularly behavioral economics. So much of the problems that we bump up against in Main Street really can be solved by just applying behavioral economic lessons that, we ultimately have incentives and we can reward or we can punish. And most every issue we come up to, we need to start to apply those lessons or think about that and how we shape human behavior. And simultaneously, like there's often inside economics and behavioral economics, there's answers to most of the questions we have on Main Street, like why is that property empty? Well, clearly it's to somebody's advantage, though. But we'll get more into that. Later studied urban planning at down in Virginia Commonwealth University. Worked on Main Street for 2 years as a Main Street manager before becoming the Ohio Main Street coordinator for about 10 years. And then in 2016, moved to Pittsburgh and started doing some consulting. So that has led me here. But what I found through my work, what I realized after working this for a long time, is that we were kind of that I was getting it wrong, that I was looking at this problem from the wrong way, that oftentimes I was looking at it too technically. There was, we'll just have a technical answer for all these problems on Main Street, that there's got to be this very technical solution. And came to find that I was looking at it wrong, that we couldn't come to the right answers because we were trying to address the wrong problem. And I think that the job is a little bit different than how we see it and how we've been taught. And so here's why I think that. So one day I was, I realized when I was driving to East Liverpool, Ohio, which in the office was often referred to as the Depression Belt, sadly, this group of communities along the Ohio River. I realized when I was driving there one day as the state coordinator that I was sort of dreading getting to this community. I was not looking forward to it. That I always felt run down when I worked there, and that it was just a hard experience. That it was, the day you had to go there was one of your rougher working days of the work year, and it was a struggle. It always felt uncomfortable. It always felt, a bit depressing to go to East Liverpool and some of the towns nearby. And I started to think a lot about that. Why is it? Why, when I go to East Liverpool to work for a day, do I feel so crummy? And sort of think, like, one, it's the conditions. Like, it's in terrible shape. The buildings are run down. It's there's always trash in the street. Nothing's ever cleaned up. It's just the setting and the environment is off-putting, and it made me feel bad. It made me feel sort of depressed. But simultaneously, like, there was always infighting. The people didn't get along. Everybody blamed everybody for everything. I swear the weather, no matter what, was 35 and rainy, but that can't be true. But it did feel that way. It always felt gloomy, and it just struck me like, what's going on in this town that really bums me out, that makes everybody in the office kind of have the same distaste for going there. What is it about this community? And I realized it really is that setting. It's the setting that's causing so much of this. It's the setting, it's the conditions, it's the decline that is really like, it's affecting me just to go there for a day, and I didn't want to go there. And it's like, oh wow, like that's how I feel after, working there for a half day. What does it feel like to live there? How would it change you? How would it affect you to call that home? Like, what's the weight of feeling depressed or crummy over the course of not just hours, but months, years, and decades? How would that change a person? How would that change local politics? How would that change local dynamics? Because I can feel pretty sure if it's hard to spend a few hours there, there has to be something that changes about your psyche to spend your life there. And so it really made me think a lot more about how our places affect our health, our mental health, our well-being. That in essence, the place that we take on the identity of the places we are, and simultaneously the places that we live take on the identity of the people that call them home. Like, it's really nearly impossible to separate. You can't separate people from the place, people from the place that they live, and the place from the people that inhabit it. Because in essence, a place takes on the characteristics of the people that call it home. So that's why when we think of a resident of Brooklyn or Green Bay or Davenport, we think of a very different group of people, because it's a different climate. They have a different background. They're from a, different culture, different built environment, but it's also those people are impacted by the same story. Whether that story is one of resiliency and optimism or positivity, or whether a town's been kicked repeatedly, whether the town has just had bad news. And a lot of the towns, the town where I grew up and most towns that I worked with had been kicked repeatedly and gotten bad news and sort of feel like they've been swindled and just, every day, like tomorrow's going to be worse than today. And there were, there's not every town in Ohio was that way. There were some towns that had gotten over that had had good news, that were optimistic, where it's like, hey, things are going great, and people felt great. And Michael, I bet you kind of had this experience, but man, you can be in a town for 10 minutes and have a really good understanding just by the attitude of people, just by the way it feels, just by the vibe, whether or not things are going well. And it's a really crazy experience. But and all of us had probably had that experience to go into a town, and it's like, yeah, it's good or it's not. But these towns that were really the hardest to deal with were the ones where you showed up and real quick you're like, oh, something's wrong, something's bad. It doesn't feel good. And that always played out. It always played out in those conversations with the, infighting and backbiting and distrust and generational distrust. And I realized that these people were in a toxic relationship with their community. And if you think about the signs of a toxic relationship, it's like lack of communication, distrust, that skepticism, all the things that come with a relationship that isn't healthy. Partners tear one another down instead of building one another up. That this is the relationship people had with their town. These places were dealing with something that was really serious, and we kept saying, well, why don't you get some grants? We kept saying, what about a plan? We kept trying to apply the old logic to fix this issue, and then going back and be like, well, you'd go back a year later thinking that something would be better just to find nothing had changed, and be like, oh, this town. And it got to the point where it's like, I can't keep blaming this town for not getting better. I think that we're applying the wrong lessons. We're clearly giving them bad advice, and we can't keep blaming this town if they won't take the lessons that we're giving. We've got to change the lessons that we're giving. We've got to maybe think about what the problem really is instead of just assuming we already know, and start to apply different solutions. So this, ruminated for a number of years, trying to figure out, what was going on. Or how do we fix these towns that are dealing with something different than what we think? When I did a project in Massillon, Ohio, and we were doing some public engagement for a plan. That thing where you ask people what they want and completely ignore it, and then 5 years later ask them what they want again. just to ignore it. Yeah, we were doing that. And in Massillon, during that public engagement portion, people were like, well, what really sets us apart is how proud we are as a community. What makes us great is that we're so proud that Massillon is the proudest town that ever was invented, and on and on and on. It's like, yeah, okay, I got it. Calm down. You're really proud. But I thought, like, that's great. What a wonderful attribute to have. What a great thing to be. Cool. And so we wrapped up, and me and a colleague took a walk around town to do some exploring. And it was the craziest thing because all that pride that they talked about, couldn't find it anywhere. Simply was not on display, which is interesting because I've come to understand is that pride is something that's very visible. When you look at somebody, you can tell whether or not they're proud of themselves generally by how they've cared for themselves, how they present themselves, their all their mannerisms, their grooming, etc. If you look at somebody's home or car or yard, you can make some pretty good assumptions about whether or not they're proud of that thing by how it looks, how they take care of it. And here was a town that was stating, hey, we're so proud, but to walk around, there weren't any signs of it. Nothing was being tended to. Things weren't being taken care of. And pride, when we're proud of something, we take good care of it. So it wasn't the homes, it wasn't the yards, it wasn't the buildings, it wasn't the sidewalks, it wasn't the streets, it wasn't the parks, it wasn't like none of those outwardly signs or those appearances of pride were on display, which led me to this, second big sort of epiphany. It's like, well, what is pride and how does it manifest? How do we behave? How do we demonstrate pride in something? Later, I found what was going on with the disjointed conversation and the reality. But they were really proud of their football team. They were crazy about their high school football team, and they had kind of conflated the idea of the two, that being proud of their high school football team was the same as being proud of the community. And sadly, it is very different. But it was also sort of encouraging to realize that people are desperate to invest their pride somewhere. And if they couldn't do it in their homes or their yards, or their community or their streets, they were finding the high school football team and putting their investment there. Maybe not the best place, but at least it was encouraging to know, look, we're like, here's something that's good to know, and something that we can build upon, is that people are desperate to feel pride in something. And so the kind of the next step in this I guess my discovery of civic pride and civic apathy was my wife's community. She grew up in her whole family's from this Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, and Aliquippa is an old steel town, and Aliquippa, suffered as most of Western Pennsylvania did, the devastating effects of the collapse of the steel industry and how much it changed. And so when you drive past Aliquippa, though, this is the sign welcoming you to the business district. This bust up, rusty sign on some rotting wood in front of a falling down building in a patch of weeds.
How we doing? All right. Was that the engine that has been on order for a year? Yeah. They're due in mid-May.
Yep. Somebody needs to go on mute.
I'm going to communicate that to Todd.
I just sent another.
Oh, boy. All right. I'm glad that Todd's going to be communicated to, at least. All right. So I was thinking about pride, how pride manifests itself, how it reacts, how it behaves, and how it affects a community, and how it affects people individually. And we're driving past the Aliquippa sign one day, and it's like, holy shit! Like, ouch! Think about that. Like, here's a sign that's announcing our community is behind this. Pull off this exit and welcome to Aliquippa. And what does it say? How does that sign speak to? Like, what's it inform you? Because I know as the passerby, it tells me everything I need to know and everything Aliquippa doesn't want to announce, is that this town suffers from a lack of care, a lack of maintenance, a lack of concern, a lack of love, that it is suffering from rampant apathy, that things are not good, and that people do not probably feel good about themselves and probably don't have a healthy relationship with the community. That's what the sign announces to me as an outsider. Then I think even worse, like, what's it say to you? What happens when you're rolling down the highway and put on your turn signal to pull in here? This is the sign you have to drive past. How does that affect you? How does that change who you are? How you feel about your community, how you feel about your home, and how you feel about yourself? Because that isn't going to be good. Which led me to finally to this idea that what we're dealing with is people. Like, yes, it's a community, but what we're really trying to do is revitalize the people in the community. We're dealing with apathy, which is your relationship to something. It's about care, it's about concern, it's about maintenance, it's about standards, it's about how we relate to something, how we care for something. And so it's not quite the same technical issue that we've been thinking, but it's about people, the people in the community and how we think about them. And we've made great strides in recent decades about how we think about health and the healthcare system and mental health and how we lift people back up, how we take somebody that's been, that's down in the dumps, somebody that's depressed, somebody that's dysfunctional, somebody that's really, really struggling. How do we lift them up? And we don't do it by giving them a 300-page plan. We don't do it by handing them, a blank check. We don't say, hey, just toughen up. Like, what we realize, or what any of us have experienced that's either dealt with this or dealt with somebody that's been dealing with being in a really bad place, is that it has to start small. It has to be incremental, but it also has to be internal. You can't fix an internal problem externally. You can't just magically make somebody that's run down feel better. You kind of have to help them. You have to guide them. You have to counsel them. You have to help them along the path, because ultimately the only way to feel a sense of pride is through your own accomplishments, through your own effort. No one can give it to you. No one can bestow upon you a sense of accomplishment and a sense of pride. You can only guide somebody, but ultimately they have to take the steps. And so I see that that's kind of what we've been doing wrong, and it made me rethink how we do our work. And that's been a real, that's completely changed the way I've thought about it. And so I see so many communities get a ton of bad advice, and so many great people get involved that just want to make their town better, but they get bad advice. And so I'm just trying to get a little bit better advice that what we need to do is try to restore a sense of pride. We have to counsel communities. We have to lift them up, but people have to be in charge. They have to take the action. Nobody can fix it outside. It has to be fixed from within, inside. So which leads me to the story of Lima, and how our towns changed so much, which should be in some insight into how they need to change back, of what happened to make communities from being so proud to being places that are filled with apathy. What happened, and how do we go about changing it? So this is the town Lima is the town where I grew up, but it's certainly not the place that you see in this picture. This is the place where my grandparents grew up. It's the same coordinates, it's the same name, but this place was gone by the time I was born. But I want to tell the story of Lima, the story of civic pride and apathy through the lens of Lima, Ohio. But I think that you'll see that it's applicable to nearly every town. Towns aren't that different from one another. They've all gone through the same changes. They all have a very similar story, and so the lessons are the same. But what I realized is that the old Lima had all these ways to demonstrate pride and all these reasons for residents of Lima to feel proud. And one of the first that comes to mind, and this is how pride works. And so this is going to be true for you as an individual, for a company, and certainly for a city. But the way that we operate, when we put in effort, we feel a sense of pride. And our communities, man, Lima certainly, same for every community, but they put in a tremendous amount of effort. This region was called the Great Black Swamp, and individuals moving from other places around the world moved there, drained the swamp, and did so much work. They put in so much effort. And when we put in effort, we feel good, we feel a sense of reward, we feel a sense of accomplishment. Simultaneously, effort leads to progress. Progress makes us feel good. Progress makes us proud. When we get better at anything, when we get better at, running a mile, when we get better at playing the guitar, when we get better at learning a craft, we see that we've made progress. And it all has to come through effort. No one can bestow, there's a reason why shake weights don't work. There's a reason why there's no magic diet pills. There's a reason why there's no secrets to getting rich. It all takes effort. And when you put in effort, you progress, and progress feels good. We're proud of it. There was a tremendous sense of ownership. Nearly everything in the community was owned by somebody within the community, and that makes a difference. We're proud of the things that we own. We have a different relationship to the things we own. And there's this collective sense of community ownership that takes place when you know the people that own the buildings, when they own the commerce, when you know that the fortunes of your community are that the people of your community are responsible for the fortunes of your community. And there was this huge sense of ownership. And again, we're proud when we have that ownership relationship. Beauty. That our towns, and certainly Lima, it was gorgeous that all the buildings, there was craftsmanship on display using local materials, the sticks and stones that consisted of that made up the landscape, that actually made that was the natural environment. They used with this incredible craftsmanship, coupled with patience and time, to make buildings that were tremendous, to create places that made us feel a sense of elegance, that made us feel dignified. And so these towns were just beautiful because of it. And there's a rich sense of community, that people knew one another. You walk down the street, bump into neighbors, bump into friends, bump into council, all the people, all the civil servants, and all the people that help run the town. And simultaneously, when you shop, you were probably shopping with somebody you knew, and it just feels good. We've all had that experience when you're walking somewhere and you bump into 3 or 4 people, like, you're going to have a great day. That's a fun feeling, and it makes you feel good. And there were tremendous legacies. Sorry, I always do that. That our communities had these tremendous legacies that people worked really hard. And these are my grandparents, and they all worked really hard to establish legacies. They demonstrated their pride by getting involved, creating businesses, having families, and trying to leave their community better for the people coming behind them, trying to leave something for the people that they cared about. So what had happened is that our towns, Lima and all of our towns, are places to be incredibly proud of, because so much effort went into them, because so much progress is being made, because we had all this local ownership, because there was this strong sense of community, because people had established these legacies. To live in these communities made people incredibly proud. And when we're proud of something, we take care of it, we share it, we love it, we look after it, we make sure that relationship is as healthy as can be. That's what these towns had. But we were like, screw it. I really want to be able to eat some hamburgers in my SUV. Forget this. Like, I'm tired of walking to the grocery. I want to have to load up 8 weeks worth of groceries at Sam's Club. In essence, what we did is we bought into this notion that the car was going to save us. Car was just an invention. The mistake we made is overhauling our entire landscape, all of our cities, our entire lives around the car, when it was just an invention. And so what we did is we shifted from a local economy to a sprawl economy. We shifted from local ownership to national chains, and we shifted from these cute, walkable, nice places to sprawling places that require everybody to have a car. And it's really it's hard to overstate this. It's really devastated our communities, but our lives as well. In pretty much every manner, it's made things worse. But the impact it's had on our cities by shifting from this local economy to a sprawl economy to a convenience economy, quotation marks, is what it's done is it's depressed standards. Because there's always this outside pressure. National chains don't want to spend much money in construction because that hurts their bottom line. National housing developers, subdivision developers, what they're trying to do is maximize profits, which is fine. That's fine. That's how capitalism works. But what it's done is depress standards. And national chains, national builders, whatever, come to town and say, no, we don't want to build to this standard. That's not fair. You're anti-business, you're socialist, etc. Looks don't matter. You're being unreasonable, etc. And all this pressure to lower standards and to accept what was once unacceptable, to watch the old buildings fall apart, to see standards go down. And lowering standards is never a strategy for improvement. It's certainly changed local ownership. Very little of our communities now, very little of the retail, very little of the commerce and the buildings, the real estate is owned locally. The work has certainly changed. And while it's, applaud anybody that shows up for a paycheck, there's a lot less meaningful work these days. It's a lot harder to find a job that makes you feel really good about the 8 hours that you put in. And there's a lot more work for national chains that at the end of the day, yeah, you've got your paycheck, but you probably don't feel great about it. it's harder to find that sense of community. You know, we're always behind some sort of screen, be it a laptop, a phone, or a windshield. And that tight sense of community, that close-knit sense of community is really hard to find. And I mean, it's an absolute crisis. The sense of loneliness and isolation in this country is out of control, and it's become a crisis because people don't know one another, and they don't feel connected, and they don't feel like they're a part of something bigger. And it's changed the nature of family. This is my family, you know, because of Lima changed, everybody moved away. So now instead of having this close-knit, you know, family where you get to live close to your brothers and sisters or aunts or uncles or parents and nieces and nephews, people have spread out because of how communities have changed and how devastating. I mean, for me, it's awful. I hate that we don't all live close to one another. And when a town stays healthy, when a town remains, you know, when a town makes people proud and when it offers opportunity, there's no reason to leave. And so families stay intact. And it's changed legacies. It's wiped out legacies. It wiped out my grandfather's legacy. He had a bar in town and then a hotel. And now, you know, what used to be what was his legacy, what mattered to him, that what he wanted to pass down, it's the inside of a clover leaf now. My other grandfather came back from the war to start a food distribution business that was located near this part of Lima. And that's what that area looks like today. And so just in Lima alone, you know, thousands, if not tens of thousands of legacies were just absolutely wiped out, removed from the face of the earth. And think how that's changed. Think about the businesses that could have been passed down, or the real estate, or the knowledge, you know, the skills and the wealth, all those things that it could have been passed down, that made a town great, were wiped out. Certainly beauty could no longer be afforded, and so our places stopped being attractive and started being more depressing. I'm actually going to skip this. It's associated with the video. But the idea being that as our places change in nature, as that beauty recedes and standards decline and we don't maintain things, what we see is that it has a huge impact on our mental health. What we see is that there's a reason if you look at a street and say, like, man, I bet you like a bunch of criminals and addicts live on that street, you know, kids lock your doors. Like, there's a reason you say that, and you're not entirely wrong. That judgment, while it may feel weird to make, what you're seeing is decline. You're seeing the physical manifestation, the physical features of decline. And decline is unsettling, and decline is uncomfortable. And what we recognize when we see decline and associate the built environment with people, you're not wrong, because the people that are surrounded by decline themselves. They adapt. It's not like a bunch of people said, hey, a bunch of people that are struggling in life are like, hey, let's buy up all the real estate here. No, that over time, people that inhabit a declining place, yes, there's certain economic circumstances, but they also are changed by that environment declining. If you couldn't maintain your house, let's say today, the place where you live, if you couldn't maintain it for the next 6 months, if you couldn't clean it, if you couldn't fix things that had gone wrong, if you couldn't repair it or maintain it at all, at the end of those 6 months, you would feel very differently about your home, but you would also feel differently about yourself. You would no longer enjoy it. That place would start to affect you mentally because you'd be surrounded in something that wasn't being taken care of, and decline affects us mentally. And so imagine a whole population living in a place that has been declining for decades. Those pretty buildings, those iconic downtown buildings that really make a place who it is, and that gives a place its identity. To see those decline over the course of decades can't help but impact how people feel, their nature, their relationship to their town, and their psyche. And so more and more, I think what we're seeing is that we are our places, that our mental health and our well-being and our identity is affected by the condition of where we live. Not just the interior of our home, but the block, the neighborhood, the whole community. And so that's why when you go to a place, that's why when you go to a pretty place, you feel better. That's why when you walk into a gorgeous place, you feel different. We don't travel just to look at pretty places. We travel because it makes us feel prettier. We travel to nice places because it makes us feel better. You can walk down a beautiful street and feel a sense of pride and feel a sense of dignity about yourself that impacts us personally and emotionally just because of the surroundings you're in. That's why spring cleaning feels good. That's why cleaning your house feels good and planting a garden feels good. It makes us feel better about ourselves. Yet we've created these places we're simultaneously allowing the places that once made us feel good collapse and decline, while only building places that make us feel worse, that are cheap and ugly. And so it's affecting who we are as a people. So, jumping back. So here was the Lime of my grandparents. This is what it looked like. This is what it felt like. This is how you would feel when you were there. You'd feel this rich sense of community. You were always walking. You knew that everything was owned locally. It was beautiful. There was high standards. Progress was always being made. And here's the Lima I grew up in. And you can't, with a straight face, say that there's not going to be a difference of the people that call those places home. Same town, same coordinates, wildly different place. They let the downtown collapse and they built this garbage, and then people are surprised and say, kids these days, like, of course apathy is going to run rampant. Of course people aren't going to care. They're not going to feel connected. They're going to be depressed. They're going to be addicted. Like, my generation grew up with this. Of course we're going to be different because we grew up in a different place. We were surrounded by a very different environment. Our habitat was so vastly inferior to that of our great-grandparents and our grandparents that we couldn't help be different. We couldn't help but be affected like that. This is what we're trying to fix, is to give people places that don't scream apathy and lonely, and to give them a little bit of beauty and dignity and pride in their lives. So how can we heal? What do we do about this problem? We used to live in places that made us immensely proud. We abandoned that. We adopted this new idea. We completely threw out what worked because we wanted to try something new, and it's been an abject failure in every single way. The sprawl economy, the convenience economy, the car economy has been a disaster that we have to turn away from. The evidence is in, we can say no, and we have to start doing something new. And by the way, if anybody in your town is like, oh, I don't like these progressive ideals, this is too forward, this is, some sort of liberal agenda, like, ha! Walkability, good urbanism, and density basically is what we had from the year 7000 BCE up until about 1940 or 50. We've had an experiment for a few decades with this idea of sprawl and car culture and convenience and national chains. Our grandparents had good density. Our grandparents had good urbanism. Our grandparents lived in walkable communities. This is a failed experiment that we don't have to keep perpetuating. We can turn away from it, and it certainly is time. So what we have to do, instead of it being a technical problem, what it is an emotional problem. It's not just a matter of money. It's not a matter of planning. It's not, more investment isn't going to fix it. More tourism isn't going to fix it. This is an emotional problem because cities are habitats for people. So what we're seeing is that people don't care about their communities. They're apathetic about their communities. Pride is the opposite of apathy. Pride is the opposite. If you have a lack of care and concern, what you need to do then is cultivate more reasons for care and concern. You have to alleviate, or you have to remove those things that people don't care about. And what you actually have to do is give them more things to care about. Stop asking everybody to show up to meetings and trying to get them to, trying to get everybody on board with how do we make progress. Just make progress. Just give people more things to care about. Just make it easier to love your community. Just make it easier for people to have care and concern. Just build pride. Because when you make it easier for people to be proud of their community, they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more on board. It's an emotional equation. Foster on people. Make residents proud. Make them happy. And that's what the key is. So how do we help? What I've figured out is that, oh, by the way, this is my Photoshop skills. I am available for hire as a graphic designer. But how do we help? What I've identified is that there are really 5 different points of pride or pillars of pride, that if we focus in these 5 areas, we can start to rebuild that pride in our communities. We can start to make people feel emotionally attached. We can make it easier for people to feel a sense of care or concern or love, if you will, for their communities. First is identity. We have to have a strong identity. And some of the ways that we can build identity is through tradition. Not fundraisers, okay, like simply traditions. Things that make people feel more rooted to their communities, things that make people feel together, things that make people feel that their town is special and their relationship to their community are special. Traditions are fantastic for building a sense of identity. Here's an Amish tradition that you see around Central Ohio and Central Pennsylvania, the barn building. Events, events can be a great tradition. Again, not just fundraisers, but events that celebrate local culture. Dingus Days are big in Pittsburgh and Buffalo and anywhere where you have a Polish community. History, history matters, and celebrating history. Who came before? What's the story of your community? What hardships have they overcome? What obstacles have they managed to overcome? What successes they have? Who are the great people that came from the community? Celebrate those things. Here's a tradition I started in my town where I was a Main Street manager, where we would hike up to the top of Mount Pleasant on Thanksgiving morning, and it started with 4 of us, and now 100 people do it. And this is the coolest experience to go through. So think of ways to deepen that identity, to make a town feel more special, and to help people have a better relationship back to their community. Raising standards, relentlessly raising standards. No one ever improved, no institution or individual ever improved by lowering standards. Raise them and raise them repeatedly, because when people are asked to do more, to give more, to be better, you give them an opportunity to improve, to shine, and to progress. When you just ask less of people all the time, and this is volunteer, board member, property owner, business owner, give them the opportunity to improve and shine. When it comes to standards, what I'm biggest on is vacant property is bullshit. Do not let property sit vacant. Do not let property decline. There are a million compelling reasons, and you have to, your organization should make sure to work with your municipality to pass legislation to make sure that property isn't allowed to sit empty. I was thinking about it this way. It's like, we defend the rights of people so hard that don't care about their property at all, yet while completely ignoring and insulting the people that do take care of their property. It's backwards. So vacant property legislation is what's up there in the corner. If you ever have any questions about property rights and vacant property and dealing with blighted property, please reach out. So much can be done, but we have to be willing to work with local council to get stuff done. Standards can be raised in a number of ways. Knoxville recently passed this too. It's like a microphone that picks up when decibels are too high and automatically tickets the driver. So, we all have men with small penises in our towns that feel it necessary to drive their motorcycles and big trucks, as loud as possible and wake everybody up. We don't have to accept that. We can raise standards and pass the type of legislation and pass policy that eliminates that. Nudges in the right direction. Hey, we noticed that you've invested in your property. That's another one nice way to raise standards is recognize people that are doing well. Certainly with our boards, if your recruitment strategy is, hey, are you free all the time? Do you have nothing to do on Monday evenings? A lack of commitment, a lack of obligation is not necessarily a great standard to join a board. We need to ask so much more, and we need to be explicit. Look, if you're going to be on my board, we need 10 hours a month. We need 5,000 a year. We need you to host 2 parties, whatever that is. Ask more, because you'll get better people. You can have high design standards. In fact, the places that have the highest design standards have the highest property values, it's the safest investment. You can tell them how to build, and they will still come. Skipping that story, ownership and engagement. We've got to relentlessly increase the level of ownership in our communities, and that's a metric that can be measured. You can look at what the ownership in your downtown is today and see how to increase it, and also engagement. But some of the way, and the reason why it's important is, like, no one takes care of a rental car, no one washes it. We have a better relationship with the things we own. We take better care of them, and so we need to increase it. One of the best ways to do that is by creating better public space. The better the public realm is, the more ownership and engagement people feel towards their community. If you can make that public space that makes people immensely proud, they're going to take care of it, and they're going to love their town more because it makes them feel good. The goal is to make residents feel good, put them at the top. Here's a great program that the mayor of Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania puts on, litter and libations. They go and pick up trash, and then they go out and drink beer every other Saturday. And I just love this, because when you put your effort towards something, when you pick up trash, when you clean something, when you sweat towards an end, you feel a stronger sense of ownership over it. It's one thing to clean up your yard, but when you clean up your block, you've changed that relationship. When you clean up your downtown, you've changed that relationship. You have more ownership and engagement in it just for putting in some effort. It's really wild, and we need to foster it. And one of the big things that we need to make sure to do is increase local real estate ownership. Use organizations like the Incremental Development Alliance to work with municipalities at being better about fostering local real estate development simultaneously. Then this organization helps teach local people, contractors, entrepreneurs, how to become real estate developers, because we need another swarm. We need the thousands of small scale developers. Our towns were built by hundreds, if not thousands, of local developers. All the buildings, all the houses were built by people in the community. What we need to do is teach people how to do that again. We need to rebuild them. We need those skill sets again of people that understand how to get things built. Communityness. We certainly have to increase our sense of community, that sense of belonging, those relationships between people. I'm fascinated by this graph. These are blocks, city blocks, and I believe this is in San Francisco. And the paths between them, those little strings, those are it's tracking where people have traveled by foot. And so and what's crazy is you can see how traffic increases, the amount of connection between those buildings, between those homes decreases. So the less traffic you have, you're going to see more neighborly visits, more kids playing together, more social life, more people interacting in the street. But what really gets me about this image is that you can see that community really is a fabric, that it happens in person. It can only happen face to face. And the stronger that fabric gets, the more those threads intersect, the tighter it gets. The tighter that weave gets, the harder it is to pull apart, and the less chance anybody ever has to fall through. So how do we do that? Block parties are a simple and easy one. Make it again, put residents first, elevate their lives, give them fun, help them make friends. There's a Sugarland, Texas. The municipality created the Sugar Cube. It is a block party in a box. If you want to have a block party, they drop it off in your at your house, and I think it's got like beer pong and cornhole in it. Elevate people, make it easy to make friends, make it easy to have fun. This is my block. We had a block party, and it was super fun, and they happen all the time, and it helps people be more social. Here's a community in South Carolina. It's real low entry, real low cost here. Front Yard Friday at 5:30. If the sign's in your front yard, people are drinking beer in your front yard. Easy. During COVID, these guys in New Jersey started building secret bars in their garage. Make it easy for people to get together. I created a kickball league. I won't get into the story, but it was awesome, and it created a ton of friends and met a bunch of people. And the end result really was we helped save this 30,000 square foot hotel. Literally, kickball helped us preserve one of the most important buildings in the community because it started with relationships and friendships. Appearances matter. All right. Don't listen to people when they say there's an idiot in every town that's like, oh, who cares about beautification and about flowers? Nothing matters more. The way things appear form our opinions of those things all the time. We look at everything, and that our first opinions are made by looking at it, and that it makes sense. That's how humans navigate the world. Trust it. So, if there's not a dumber cliche than don't judge a book by its cover. Yes, please judge books by its cover. That's why people invest in cover art. That's why people in album art. This is the same book with two. I have a very different opinion of what that book would be about from the cover art. Another good example is, let's say that any of you happen to get pulled over today. I don't know, maybe you have a corpse in your trunk, and you are approached by a couple women to represent you in court. Who are you choosing? We judge, we use our eyes to make opinions all the time. We make judgments about our life all the time. And what you have to recall too, it's if your life is on the line, if your freedom is on the line, you're probably going to pick the person that chose to appear this way. Look, that's fine. I'm not saying one person is better than the other, but those two individuals woke up and each said, here's how I want to present myself to the outside world. What else are we supposed to ascertain about that person? The way you choose to dress, the way that you choose to look, and that's you telling the outside world, here's what I want you to know about me. And this happens in all regards. If we do it all the time, you look at a house and you make assumptions about what's going on and who lives there. And again, I understand that there's all this other things associated with it, but you still, when you look at something, you make judgments. And when you look at a community, you make a judgment about who lives there. We've all pulled into a town and said, wow, these people don't care. Wow, this town is run down. Wow, these people are messed up. And what you're seeing is they're apathetic. And it's not a good feeling. So in the end, what we're dealing with is the way people feel about their communities. It's an emotional equation. And if they don't feel good about their community, if that relationship is toxic, or if they don't even know it exists, if they don't have any love or care or concern for the community, it's an emotional issue. And it can't be fixed through these just technical solutions. It can't just be about money or planning. What we have to do is restore people's relationship, make it easier for people to care, make it easier for them to get involved, help increase ownership, raise standards, but make them feel good about their community. Stop asking them to love a place that's unlovable. Focus on making it lovable so it's easy to fall in love with. And one of the best ways I think we can do this is using those 5 pillars of pride and creating a civic pride campaign and asking people. It doesn't take a committee, it doesn't take a new organization. It's so easy to get involved. And if you break it into these 5 areas and ask people, build community, grow identity, raise standards, that's going, if you get one, if you just do a little bit, what you'll see is anybody can get involved at any level. It might just be buying a local cup of coffee. It might be scraping some paint or picking up some trash, but we can easily grow pride through this. But ultimately what it comes down to is action. There's no way around it. Like, these are all great ideas, but the most important thing with any parts of our life, but certainly with the revitalization, is that it has to be about action. The greatest plan in the world will not matter if it's not coupled with action. If you had the world's greatest personal trainer, you wanted to spend 10, 20 grand on getting this, this perfect fitness plan, it's still useless if you don't follow it up with action. Like, instead of planning, you're better off just going for a run. I love this Irish proverb: you never plow a field by turning it over in your mind. All the best advice is useless without action. We don't get better without effort. We can't learn guitar. We can't learn a language. We can't get smarter. We can't get, all of it takes effort. All of it takes action. And we have to stop thinking that there's some sort of perfect solution out there, that if we just get the right plan, if somebody just gives us a secret formula, if we can just find the silver bullet, that it'll get better. It is not true. We can't get in shape overnight. And the simple truth is the only secret to improving your community is relentless incremental action. Do a little bit of something every single day to get better. And over the course of time, that's where you find transformation. A 1% improvement every day will be a transformation in your community over the long run. And that's the sad truth. Like, there's no secrets to this. And anybody that's telling you different is selling something. Don't buy it. Simply put in the effort a little bit every day, and your community will transform. Thank you. Anybody wants to get in touch, has any follow-up questions, needs any information, you can find me, Revitalize or Die, email Jeff@revitalize-or-die, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. You always give me, and I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yes, you always give us so much to think about, and I love that last piece of action of really, kind of putting it down to reality that we don't have to make measured strides every day, that we could really be incremental about our thought and our action, which not only aligns with that theory of building community pride, or that action-oriented piece of building community pride, but it aligns with the Main Street approach, which we all live in and work within. So we do have a handful of minutes here that I do want to open it up for questions, whether that be typing them into chat, or if you feel comfortable to unmute and turn your camera on. We'd love to have the question and open conversation. And let's see here. It's a beautiful sunny day, which is not helping my glare on my screen here. So Jeff, the first question is, have you heard about the pilot program in Alabama where the University of Alabama is getting involved? And Austin, you may need to maybe unmute and provide a little bit more information. Or Jeff, do you know what he's talking about?
No, I don't.
So, hi guys. Thank you,
Hi.
Jeff and Michael, for hosting this and providing this as an opportunity for learning. And I appreciate that we got to experience this. It's very insightful. One of the things that I've been researching locally lately has been in the past couple of years, I've been doing research on what previous cities have done. We're talking from the experience of below poverty level for housing. And there have been programs that are traveling programs within the local universities, and they have allowed for even graduate level students to come in and really use the community as a learning experience and start creating what we're talking about exactly for the community with local resources, local materials. I was just curious if you had heard of one of the specific ones that I love, because um, the landscape architect ended up getting a Nobel Peace Prize for his work in Alabama. Um, if there is a case study there, which I believe that there is, how do you suggest that we bring this knowledge to our community and continue to progress as communities when people are so busy with their 9 to 5s and all of their community involvement? To start a new revitalization around housing seems like something that there's just not enough time, let alone enough people.
That's a great question, Jeff, about that, the time and being pulled in so many different directions. What have you seen?
I can't speak to the entirety of the question because I'm not sure of the, what's the case study, or but I'm certainly interested. But the time thing is a bit of a misnomer. I'd ask any time that you're in a meeting when everybody's like, we're too busy. I'm like, please pull out your phones and show us what your screen time was for last week. It's not true. Like I think everybody feels so impressed when they say how busy they are, but it's nonsense. Like, it just isn't true. And statistics show that people aren't any busier today. Actually, we have more free time. It's just, it's what we've done oftentimes. And this is, I think, a pit we fall down in community development is we're so like apologetic, or we're so unwilling, we're so concerned about overburdening people that we overcorrect on the wrong side. It's like we don't want to ask much of our volunteers, but what you end up doing is robbing of the chance of doing something meaningful. Like if you have me go out and do hard work for an afternoon, I will love my relationship with your organization. If you have me come and talk about parking for 3 straight months, or listen to your reports, like I will, despite, and what I'll say is I'm burnout, I'm too busy. Like people aren't too busy. We're not using their time wisely enough. We're trying to give that, we're trying, like, focus on providing them meaning, because I just don't think people are that busy. Volunteer, there's no proof. There's no proof that volunteer numbers are down. There's certainly proof that people actually aren't any busier than they are today. We just kind of keep making excuses, and we're not asking the right questions of people. Ask more of them. And the best board member experiences I've seen are those board members that feel a sense of meaning, when they feel like they're making a difference, when they see their impact, they work their asses off, and they love the experience and they're having a great time. It's those boards that are just listening to reports every month that complain. So I think that people aren't as busy as they tend to tell us.
Jeff, thank you for that perspective. And if you want to send me the Alabama information related to the University of Alabama, I could do a little research and see about ways that we may be able to mimic some of those case studies here in Iowa.
I have a YouTube video about it, which the class combined, and it is a phenomenal. I'd love to send it to you, Michael. Thank you for your time. And thanks, Jeff.
Yep, send it my way, and we'll see what we can do. All right. Any other questions, whether that be via chat or unmuting yourself? All right, we are quiet. So Jeff, I will begin to say thank you until a question comes in, and inevitably as I'm thanking you. But we do appreciate and value your perspective so much. I think sometimes it's good to hear real talk about some of the things that we dance around. So for your time and all the work that you're doing in states and communities across the country. It's always good to have you as part of the Main Street Iowa Network, and we'll continue to adopt you as a an honorary Iowan every time you're here. So
I appreciate that. It's a good state to be honorary involved with, but yeah, I mean it's I love the work, and I just see unfortunately that cities, that great people get involved, and then they get in a position of like, how do I make an impact? And they get a lot of bad advice, and it's like, do a plan, write a grant, this or that, and it's like all the answers that all of us need, we already know because we are people. You know, there's no secrets and there's really no expertise to this stuff. If there's a place you like, everybody else will probably like it. If you know, like we're people aren't that different, not through the generations and not from city to city or state to state. So really that all the expertise in the community is already there, and we don't need to do a ton of studies to try to find out what people like. We really need to we need to move past that point in this. We're in such an overcorrection period of like, how do we get everybody on board to make any progress, to do anything? And that's something that's going to be hard, but we have to stop doing and just say, let's make it better. You know, there's no politics in making your community better, and we don't need 100% approval to do what's right. We know what things are pretty. We know what looks nice. We know that local ownership's good, and we know that more social opportunities are better. Is better. Just do those things, and things will improve, and we'll make it easier to fall in love with our towns. And then I will stop with my rant and turn it back over to you, Michael.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. I think the challenge that I heard loud and clear, and I hope that everyone else heard loud and clear, is, you know, start today. What's that one small thing you could do? Steve posted a great comment. It's a great time of year to pick up litter. There's always an opportunity to pick up just one thing when you're walking from business to business during your daily life. So think about that challenge. What's one thing you could do today to make your community just a little bit better and build a little bit more pride from an incremental perspective? As we wrap up today's leadership webinar, I do want to just kind of note the obvious, that we are getting into a very exciting time of the year, both with the weather being a little nicer and just a gorgeous day here throughout the state. But as we look ahead on our calendar, next Friday is the Main Street Iowa Development Awards. We have 500 RSVPs. So we are very excited to have 500 Main Streeters from across the state to come together to celebrate everything that's going on, to build momentum and energy in our network. So for those of you that have RSVP'd, we'll look forward to seeing you next Friday. As we look a little further down the calendar, the May leadership webinar will be facilitated by Main Street Iowa's Carol Lilly, and she will be talking about leadership development through event planning and volunteer management. So a critical topic that is important to the day-to-day workings of many organizations across the state. So that'll be the same channel, the same time, the second Wednesday at 9 o'clock. So we'll look forward to seeing you all. Then. And then, of course, we will be leading up to our in-person spring workshop. That'll be in Uptown Marion on March 16th and 17th. The reminder on this that you've seen in FYI is not only to register for the workshop itself, but to make sure that you are making hotel arrangements. There are some really great lodging options in Marion, and many of them are being snatched up by people who are planning ahead. So I do encourage you to take a few moments today to register for the workshop and get your lodging taken care of. With that, it is right at 10 o'clock. We are grateful for your participation today, but most importantly, we're so grateful for everything that you're doing in your community to make your place better and make our economy stronger. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Get out and enjoy the sunshine today, and we'll look forward to seeing you all sometime very soon. Have a great day, everyone.